For most of my life, I believed loyalty was something that built itself quietly over time. 32 years to be exact. 32 years with my best friend Diane Keller. The woman who had stood beside me at my wedding, held my hand during my divorce, and slept on my couch the night her husband walked out with a younger woman. I thought there was nothing we didn't know about each other. Turns out I was wrong. My name is Margaret Lawson, and at 61 I owned something I had built from absolutely nothing. Lawson Atelier, a luxury home decor company that began in the spare bedroom of my townhouse and slowly grew into a brand carried by boutiques across the country. Custom lighting, hand-woven rugs, sculptural furniture, elegant pieces designed for people who appreciated craftsmanship. After 20 years of exhausting workdays and sleepless nights, the company was finally worth over $12 million. And I trusted exactly two people with it. My operations manager, Ethan Cole, who had joined the company 8 years earlier, and Diane. 3 years ago, after her messy divorce left her nearly bankrupt, I offered her a position as creative director. A generous salary, full benefits, a corner office. She hugged me so tightly that day she cried. Said I had saved her life. For a long time I believed that. Until one evening in late September, I had returned to the office after hours to pick up a sketchbook I'd forgotten. The building was nearly empty, but as I walked past the design studio, I heard Diane's voice inside, laughing, and what she said next made my entire world stop. Because she wasn't talking about helping me run my company. She was talking about how she and Ethan planned to take it from me. I froze in the hallway. The studio door was slightly open, just enough for their voices to slip through. Diane laughed again, low, confident, the kind of laugh she used when she thought she had already won. "You're sure she hasn't noticed anything?" she asked. Ethan scoffed. "Margaret? Please. She still signs whatever I put in front of her." My stomach dropped. I slowly stepped closer, careful not to make a sound. Inside, they were sitting at the long design table where we used to brainstorm new collections together. The same table where Diane once cried and thanked me for giving her a second chance at life. Now she was leaning back in her chair like the place already belonged to her. "We just need the board meeting next month," Ethan continued. "Once the investors hear the financial projections, we push the vote." Diane tapped her nails on the table. "And Margaret." A pause. Then Ethan said something that made my chest tighten. "She'll step down. One way or another." Diane didn't sound worried. She sounded amused. "You really think she'll fight us?" she asked. Ethan laughed. "No. Margaret Lawson is sentimental. She still believes loyalty means something." I felt something sharp twist in my chest. 32 years of friendship. And apparently, they thought I was too naive to notice they were planning to steal the company I built from nothing. Diane stood and walked toward the door. I quickly slipped down the hallway before she could see me. My heart was pounding, but my mind was suddenly very clear. Because they were right about one thing. I did believe in loyalty. But what Diane and Ethan didn't know yet was that I had already noticed something strange in the financial reports 2 weeks earlier. 2 weeks earlier, I had been reviewing quarterly reports late at night in my home office. Numbers have always spoken clearly to me. Small inconsistencies, tiny details most people overlook. And that night something felt off. A supplier payment listed twice. Consulting fees approved under a department that didn't use consultants. At first I assumed it was a simple bookkeeping error. But curiosity got the better of me. So I kept digging. What I found made my stomach turn. Over the past year, nearly $1.8 million had quietly moved through a chain of shell vendors, companies that technically existed, but barely conducted any real business. And every approval signature at the bottom of those transactions belonged to one person. Ethan Cole. At the time I didn't want to believe what it looked like. Ethan had been loyal for 8 years. Diane had vouched for him personally when we hired him. Which was why I never confronted him immediately. Instead, I did something far more useful. I called an old friend, David Chan, a forensic accountant who specialized in corporate fraud investigations. He agreed to review the financial records quietly. "No accusations yet," I told him. "I just want to know the truth." David spent 10 days combing through everything. Bank transfers, vendor contracts, payroll authorizations. When he finally called me back, his voice was calm. but the words hit like a hammer. Margaret, you're being robbed. Not by strangers. By people sitting inside your company. And after what I overheard in the design studio that night, I finally understood something terrifying. They weren't just stealing money. They were planning to take the entire company. But Diane and Ethan had made one fatal mistake. They thought I was defenseless. They had no idea I had already started setting a trap. The moment David confirmed the fraud, I stopped thinking like a friend. I started thinking like a business owner. First, I hired a corporate attorney. Not just any attorney, Lillian Grant, the kind of lawyer who had dismantled billion-dollar fraud cases without raising her voice once. After reviewing the evidence David gathered, she looked up from the files and asked a single question. Do you want them arrested? Or simply removed? I didn't hesitate. Both. Over the next 3 weeks we worked quietly. Very quietly. David traced every suspicious payment Ethan had approved. The shell companies all led back to accounts connected to a small holding firm. And that firm? It had been registered under Diane Keller's name. The betrayal didn't even surprise me anymore. But the arrogance did. Because their real plan wasn't just stealing money. They had been quietly approaching 2 of our minority investors, convincing them that I was out of touch, and that the company needed new leadership. Their goal was simple. Force a board vote. Push me out. Take control. Unfortunately for them, they had already scheduled the board meeting themselves, which meant they were walking straight into the stage I had prepared. On the morning of the meeting, Diane walked into the conference room wearing a crisp white blazer and the confident smile of someone who believed victory was already hers. Ethan followed with a laptop and a stack of presentations. Neither of them noticed the quiet man sitting beside my attorney, the federal investigator. The meeting began normally. Diane presented first. Lawson Atelier needs modern leadership, she said smoothly. Then she looked at me. Margaret has done wonderful work, but perhaps it's time she steps aside. I smiled calmly and slid a thick folder across the table. Before we vote, I said softly, I think everyone should see where $1.8 million actually went. And for the first time that morning, Diane's smile disappeared. The room went completely silent. Diane stared at the folder in front of her like it might explode. Ethan shifted in his chair. I watched both of them carefully. 32 years of friendship had taught me how Diane reacted when she was nervous. Her fingers always tapped against the table. They were tapping now. My attorney, Lillian, calmly opened the folder and began sliding documents toward the investors seated around the conference table. Bank transfers, vendor contracts, corporate registrations. Every page connected the same trail. Lawson Atelier money, flowing directly into accounts controlled by Diane and Ethan. One of the investors frowned as he scanned the paperwork. Is this real? That depends, Lillian replied evenly. Do you consider federal financial records real? The quiet man beside her finally spoke. I'm Special Agent Robert Hale, he said, placing a badge on the table. We've been reviewing this case for several weeks. Ethan's face turned pale. Diane looked at me like she didn't recognize the woman sitting across from her anymore. You set us up, she whispered. I shook my head slowly. No, Diane. My voice was calm. You betrayed me. 2 security officers stepped into the room moments later. Ethan stood abruptly. Margaret, we can explain. But the agent interrupted. You can explain it at the federal office. They were escorted out without another word. The door closed behind them, and for the first time in months the air in the room felt lighter. One investor looked at me carefully. So what happens now? I folded my hands and smiled. Now, I said quietly, we get back to building something honest. Because some people think kindness is weakness. But what they never understand is that kind people are usually the ones who survive betrayal the best. The conference room stayed quiet for a moment after they were gone. 32 years of friendship had ended in a matter of minutes. Not with shouting. Not with revenge. Just the truth. Later that evening, I walked through the design studio alone. The same studio where Diane and I once spent hours laughing over sketches and coffee. Felt different now. But not empty. Stronger. Because sometimes the people who betray you don't destroy your life. They reveal who was never meant to stay in it. And the strangest part? A week later, Lawson Atelier signed the largest contract in the company's history. Turns out removing the wrong people makes room for the right opportunities. But I still think about one question. If I hadn't walked down that hallway that night, if I hadn't heard that conversation, how long would they have kept smiling to my face? So now I want to ask you something. If someone you trusted for 30 years betrayed you like that, what would you do? Would you forgive them? Or would you do exactly what I did? Tell me in the comments. Because sometimes the hardest lesson in life is learning that loyalty and betrayal often wear the same face.